My first introduction to Stabicraft was at the Sydney Boat Show many years ago, and it was the predecessor to this boat that they had. It was the 1410, and I went up to the stand, had a look at the boat, and actually walked away having a bit of a chuckle. And the three things that I thought were, damn, it's ugly, it's small, and it's expensive. Now, years later, I own one, or own the 1450, and my thoughts have completely changed on it. I love the blunt face on it and these angles, and it really does a good job of deflecting any water that comes up. You still do get wet if you're driving it in sloppy conditions, or if you're too heavy-handed on the throttle. It is an open boat. I think that goes for all open boats. You will cop a wave or two, so invest in some decent rain gear. But overall, I would say that for what it is and its length, it's a relatively dry boat. So firstly, she sits on a Redco alloy trailer. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with alloy trailers. It's the second one that I've owned. They're easy to clean, they look good, they really look the part, but they are light and they tend to bounce around a little bit. I think the next trailer that I'll be getting will be a C-channel gal, and that way I'll get the best of both worlds. I get the heaviness of the gal, and I also get the open sea channels to allow me to easily clean it out. A number of times I see people down the boat ramp, myself included, trying to squirt water up through these tiny little holes, getting a face full of water. At the end of the day, fishing is not much fun. So the Stabicraft is the big little boat. Everyone says that in their reviews, and it's certainly true. It's only 4.42 metres long. Stabicraft doesn't include the length of their pods in their overall calculations, so you would probably say it would be closer to about a 15-footer in old-fashioned terms. Very high-sided. It's one of the things I love about this boat, is when you're inside it feels incredibly safe and secure, and the coaming height is about halfway up thigh. So when you're leaning across, you feel like you're secure and in the boat and not going to fall out, which is great. So what I want to do is I want to take you through some of the modifications that I've done, some of the things that I've done to the boat to make life a little bit easier for myself. The first one would have to be these boat buckles. Now, they come in two variants. I've got the stainless ones, and I'd highly recommend that if you're actually in a saltwater environment, but they simply bolt onto the cross member of the trailer, and it's to replace the traditional ratchet strap. So to undo them, there's a simple release clip, retractable belt, and you're done. To repeat the process, it's pretty simple. Put them back up, a couple of clicks, and they're tight, good as. We also have one on the bow, and this is to hold the bow down when we're travelling. Just sits over the bow roller there. Very easy to release. Same thing, straight down retractable, and you're good to go. So they do require a little bit of maintenance. I will retract the belt fully, probably once every month or two. Give it a good squirt with Inex Lanex on the inside just to protect it, but being stainless steel, I think the longevity will be quite good. I find the live bait tank really well positioned. It sits out here on the transom, plenty of holes for overflow, and a big bun to let the water go at the end of the day. There's a few modifications that I've made to this that people might be interested in. Firstly, I've put this cheap plastic housing on top for the lid. It comes with just a hole in the perspex. I found my fat fingers getting caught in there quite often, and it was a little bit painful, so I put that little clip on. The other one is the variable flow input. So this is a simple upgrade. It comes standard from factory with just a pipe coming out, and I find that the flow was quite heavy. So when you're using delicate bait fish like herring, for example, and you've got that full flow of water, it would basically knock the scales off the fish and kill them. So what you can do is you can close it up, and that restricts the water flow, which is quite good. So you have it on full belt for your yellowtail and your slimies, and close it all the way up, and then just half a turn or so, and your herring will be fine. They came with a sea flow pump, and I had all sorts of problems with that. It was extremely noisy and actually vibrated through the whole boat. I've replaced that with a rule, and that's eliminated the issue. The rule is a good pump, it's good and quiet, little cut off there for your pickup when you're underway. You'll also notice that on the back here I've cut off the hoses for the self-draining deck. And I did that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I thought they were a complete waste of time. So the lay flat hoses came out here and would clip up to this clip. And it made it very, very difficult to clean up at the end of the day. So you'd drop the hoses, you'd hose the deck, get rid of all your salt water, and the hoses would keep water in and not drain. So on the 3 popular Stabicraft pages on Facebook, there's all sorts of people talking about how they've overcome that. Some will put another hose inside the hose to allow it to open to drain out. Some people put sticks in. Some people use sponges for the inside. I found them incredibly useless, to be honest, and cut them off. I've put 2 bungs on the inside, but I've installed a 900 gallon per hour Rule low profile pump. So that will get rid of any excess water that I have at the end of the day. I find it a much better solution. So on this boat I put a motor guide. This is a 54-inch shaft with a 55-pound thrust motor, 12 volt. I think it's fine if you were fishing in a impoundment situation and you didn't have wind and chop and swell and current to contend with. I think in those situations that I fish, I really would have, if I had to do it again, I would probably get a 60 or a 63-inch shaft and probably step up to the 24-volt motor. The 12-volt is fine. It's done me well, but I will say that I find the head of the motor coming out of the water, even when it's fully extended, if we do have a bit of a swell or chop running. And the consequence of that is that you can drift off your mark. Once the spot lock is off the point by 3 meters, it will actually deactivate and your boat will start drifting. One of the things I found about this boat is the incredible lack of storage. I have seen some reviews and people talk about, tons of storage on board. I don't know what they're thinking because there really isn't. It's a small boat. You've got to remember it's only 4.42 meters. So it's tiny. It feels big inside, and as a matter of fact, it's got more deck space, more fishing room than a lot of the larger boats that I've owned. I did have a 5.5 metre centre cab, and with the size of the cabin in a boat like that, the fishing room was very, very limited. So this one's got oodles of fishing room. One of the things that I've done, and I think it's probably the best modification I've made to the boat, is I have purchased a casting deck from First Light Fabrications. The boys there put out a call to the Stabby community asking who would be interested, and there were plenty of people responded. I did give them some feedback, and I've asked for 2 specific things. One is some cutouts for the lean post, and you can see that that's been accommodated for. And the second one is an entry point for the electric cable for the battery that's sitting right near the bow. And they've done that as well. They're easily removable. They pop out in seconds. They're incredibly well made, and as you can see, they match up beautifully. It really gives you a second story, if you like, for half of the boat when you're fishing. All of your bags and gear can slide down under the front and not get wet if you happen to cop a little bit of a spray. And it's an excellent, very high, but when you're up here, the vista is incredible. Rod holders, I've got no shortage of rod holders on this boat, and it's not really because I take a lot of rods out when I'm fishing. It's more so that there's always a rod holder in place to get them out of the way. So this boat does so many different types of fishing. We can be floating through the shallows for giant flathead, and the next day out chasing mahi at the fads. And it's got rod holders for every situation. So I've got the removable rail blazers down the side gunnels. There's actually 4 of them that go in there, and I find those great for when you're forward casting for snapper, particularly soft plastics. You can have the rod angled in the right direction as opposed to facing backwards. Rod buckles over and it can lead to a bit of a disaster. First Light Fabrications, I've also purchased from them a gunnel rod holder, 6 rods. Don't use this one a great deal. It's really for transit more so than anything else. When you do have your rods sitting in these rod holders, it can encroach a little bit in terms of the deck space. Now I've put tube matting on the floor. I like the stuff, but it does have its drawbacks. This is the third boat that I've had tube matting in. In my opinion, it's really the best thing that you can put over a checker plate floor. It's heavy, it wears well, and it cleans quite easily. If you do have a big day out on the water and you've got blood and guts in the boat, you do have to pull it out. I give it a bit of a gurney every couple of months, keeps it clean and looking good. It's not particularly comfortable if you're wearing bare feet or if you have bare feet, but I don't. I fish in shoes, so it doesn't worry me a great deal. What I've also done up here at the front is I've added some additional deck padding to the sides, up the front and around the corner, and I've done that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as you can see, I haven't painted my boat. I had a marine mechanic once say to me, there's two things that you don't want on a boat, and one's carpet and one's paint. And anyone that's owned a painted boat will know that as soon as you drill through it, you actually compromise the paint. Quite often, if you're not careful, you'll get bubbling around it, and then you're faced with a boat that looks like it's dying from a slow death. Sanding it back, priming it, repainting it, trying to get the paint to match, and you're always going to look at it. So I've decided to go with an unpainted boat, and I have gone to the extent of putting a coat of Nylac, which is like an advanced clear coating system on it. It's the third boat that I've had with Nylac. You can see that this boat is 18 months old. It's got 180 hours on it, and it still looks pretty damn good. It's not without its drawbacks though. Fuel and sun cream does compromise it, so you've got to be careful with those fuel spills, especially when you're changing fuel filters and the like, and also ask your crew to wash their hands after they've applied sunscreen. The BaitMate bait board is terrific in this boat. As I've mentioned before, there's not a great deal of dry storage in the boat, and or a great deal of storage at all, and what that's done is allowed me to actually have a place where I can put phones and wallets and other items inside, and it's got a waterproof seal around here. I wouldn't call it waterproof, but water resistant seal, and locks nicely. It's also got a drawer up the top so we can put our leaders and other materials in the drawer here. A cutting board and another 4 rod holders, and these 4 rod holders are particularly useful when you're running to your grounds. Get the rods out of the way. They're nice and secure up there. You've got the least amount of movement on your transom when you're hitting those waves, so I find it a particularly good place to store your rods. It's a really nice piece of kit. What I did find when I put it on, however, was that the transom wasn't solid enough to hold it. So while I think it may have been okay, when you gave the bait board a bit of a whack, it went doing, and so I've had 2 gussets welded in on the transom just to strengthen the transom and prevent that from happening. Make sure I don't do any harm to the welds over time. With the fuel tank, I've purchased a Yamaha, and it came standard with the 24 litre tote. I wasn't finding that enough. Even though the fuel economy is great in these boats, this engine will get about 3 kilometres per litre. I'll put up the fuel stats below for you to take a look. I've upgraded to a 34 litre tank. It's the low profile version, so it sits nicely underneath and is pretty cozy in there next to the fuel filter, but it's safe and secure. It does a good job. It gives me that little bit of extra range. So at 34 litres, say at 3 kilometres per litre, that gives me just over 100 kilometres, allowing for a 20% safety margin. You've got a good 80 kilometres out of the tank. Fuel capacity is something that you hear a lot of people talking about, and some people have built custom fuel tanks up front because these boats do like a bit of weight up front. Others carry 2 tote tanks, maybe a spare 5 litre jerry, but it's something that I have found myself in this little boat always conscious of, and that is, fuel flow and capacity. Luckily with the sounder, I've got sounder integration to my Yamaha, so I can see my fuel burn, as well as the Yamaha 6x8 gauges, which are terrific in terms of letting me know what's happening fuel-wise. Now, let's talk about the downsides of this boat. So it is small. We've got to remember it's only 4.42 metres, so it's incredibly difficult to be critical of it. For what it is, it punches way above its weight, and a lot of people say that in videos, but it's true. Yeah, if you've got a short, sharp chop, you're going to get smashed around. There's no doubt about it. The standard boat that I bought was the Sportfish, which is about the middle of the range. The only thing that difference was paint and an upgraded seat. I did order the upgraded captain's seat, and I found it was just way too big. Being a small boat, you need every square centimetre of room you can get. So I changed that out and put a standard captain's seat on. I also put a slide on it. So I find this rear quarter area very useful for fishing. I can keep an eye on the sounder and also have access to the side of the boat. So I've put a slide on it. So when I'm driving, it'll be in the rear position, allows me to stand easily without getting the back of my legs caught on the sliding mechanism. I press up against there. And when I want to fish the back quarter, I drop that and simply slide it forward. And it allows a bit of extra area where I can stand into the back here and fish very comfortably, keep an eye on the sounder, and do what I need to do from this side of the boat. So the captain's chair, I think, is a lovely idea. It looks good and it's comfortable, but it takes up way too much room in a boat of this size. Now, the passenger doesn't have anything. So I feel sorry for them, and I've let my son drive the boat a few times, and being in the passenger position myself, I realise it is incredibly uncomfortable. So as a standard, the console does not come with a grab rail. This is from Steve's Custom Welding. It was designed specifically for the 1450 console. Fit very well. It took me a while to install it because I wanted to make sure I got it right, nice and horizontal, and yeah, there was a bit of measurement involved in that. But it's terrific grab point for the passenger when you're cruising along. And I've also installed this other stainless rail here. So you've got two grab points on either side, but I find that these little boats, they accelerate very quickly and they also stop very quickly. So I've taken to warning my passengers when I'm about to stop or speed up, just to give them the opportunity to grab a hold of something. Before I put the side rail on, console rail was the only grab point, and what would happen was the passenger would actually pendulum around. So they'd have a firm hold here, I'd hit the anchors and they would swing around, and it became dangerous to some degree, but also very uncomfortable for the passenger. So no real seating area. I have seen some versions of this boat where they put in a second console and a second seat, but honestly, it's such a small boat that would kill so much fishing area. You really want to keep this port side clear. Gives your passenger the opportunity to, you know, use the rod holders down here and bait fish, or jump up on front and cast. This casting bar is also an excellent feature. It's stainless. It looks terrific. It's incredibly practical. We can be out there in some pretty nasty conditions, and the passenger will be up the front, leaning on the bar, and be very comfortable. So I would highly recommend you look into that if that's your sort of fishing. It's lovely to lean against, and you can, very nice and stable. The downsides for me of this boat, besides the lack of space and perhaps passenger comfort, are the fact that we need to run tote tanks and we have a battery sitting on the floor. It's just something that exposes it to the elements, and you know, we're worried about battery straps and making sure they're secure. So in a boat this size, I don't think there's a great deal of choice, but I think it's something that you know, need to be conscious of when you purchase one. And also, because the boat's really small, you've got to very carefully think about everything that you do. You know, I've spent, probably put 100 hours into fitting this one out in terms of how I want it, what works for me and the types of fishing that I do and the environment that I'm in. And I found that everything that you do has a knock-on effect, and you've got to think about everything very, very carefully when you do it, because even a couple of centimetres of space can mean the difference between being able to do something and not being able to do something. So in terms of the fit out and what I take out on the boat, it's really reduced my carrying capacity. I'm conscious about how many rods I take out. I make sure the eskies that I take out are small, large enough to hold everything that I need, but not extra space. There is an anchor bay forward that accommodates the trolling motor battery, which is good, but it will only accommodate a standard size, I think they're 33 centimetre, 12 volt battery. So if you're going a 24 volt battery setup, you need to consider what size battery you put in there. I saw a post yesterday actually, someone putting a 24 volt 100 amp hour battery and trying to squeeze it up the front. I don't know if that's possible, but he was giving it a go. I love the little dash. It's just bolted to the side, but it's practical. It looks good, powder coated black, has all my instrumentation. I put a little custom switch panel in there that basically just runs my bilge and my bait well at the moment, with a couple spares for later on. VHF, a couple Yamaha 6x8 gauges, and what I really love about these boats is the standard steering wheel. It's gorgeous, and you see a whole bunch of pretty ordinary steering wheels out on the market on boats, and I'll have to say this one is exceptional. You've got these cup holder and rod holders down the sides, which I think are a great addition. They're a great place for storing sinkers and jigs and all sorts of lures when you've got your lines up. So to wrap up, I'm not really sure what to call this video. It's part review, part fit out, but I guess more of a tribute video to what I consider to be an excellent little boat. I really doubt there's a more versatile boat in its class. It really is a jack of all trades. Now, the twist is, I guess, I just wasn't ready for it. I was at that point in my life where I'm transitioning from mostly offshore and inshore fishing to more estuary, and it should have been screamingly obvious that with a small boat comes compromises. So she's now been passed on to a proud new owner, and I'm sure will provide a ton of thrills to come. For me, we've had a truckload of fun. We've done all sorts of fishing, and the boat has produced over 15 PBs for myself and various fishing partners. But ultimately, the lure of blue water still calls, so I'm going to be sticking to the side console configuration, but we'll be going with a bigger boat. The little Stabby 1450 is great for sheltered water applications, and here I'm talking about estuary, impoundment, bay, harbour. It floats in a puddle of water, and it's also capable of the odd sneaky offshore mission, but if that's the majority of your fishing, I think you're going to miss some of your creature comforts. And for me, that came down to storage, passenger comfort, fuel capacity, and the lack of a battery compartment. So I'm trying to get my new YouTube channel up and running, so I'd appreciate it if you could show your support, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for my new boat fit out and sea trial video.